away the last time we were talking.
It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. So here we are, Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live, and what are we going to talk about today, guys? It's nothing much
there's
happening.
no news in the Apple
Nothing
world.
happening.
Yeah,
Really.
Blah,
I mean,
blah,
it's
blah.
a slow summer for Apple. There's not a lot.
Wasn't something supposed to be on Apple TV?
I think they had a short presentation today for a few of their developers.
Is that what it was?
Short.
Yeah.
And they cut all their prices by like half.
About half. Did everybody go rush over to apple.com?
It's
real
all
quick?
the same stuff. It's just cheaper. That's
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it was pretty bold to move all the video editing onto the phone. That really surprised me.
Yeah, the Final Cut Pro on the iPad.
Yeah,
on
was
the
amazing.
Apple Watch. Did you see that announcement?
yeah.
Final
That'll
Cut
be
Pro on the
kinda
Apple Watch.
Okay, that's bad. So,
But it's got a Retina display.
so one thing I just found ironic and funny is that it really looks like a cheese grater now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It even has the handle on the top.
Yes, it does.
So
It absolutely does.
I'm blaming Lumiforge for the handle.
Well, it's the same.
Had a handle.
It's the same kind of handles they had on the cheese grater.
jellyfish. Remember putting the handle on the jellyfish? That was
Yes.
a huge deal. So
Yep.
I think they were listening.
Well, but I've been teasing a mini cheese grater for a year now, and it's not a mini. It's like the
a
cheese
medium.
grater version, 2019, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, it's going to check a huge number of boxes for a huge number of institutional users who were all upset because what couldn't the circular Mac Pro do? It couldn't rack mount. It didn't fit easily on desks. It didn't fit easily into all sorts of, into OB trucks and all sorts of places that expect a 19-inch form factor. And so that is a huge check mark for the industrial class of user.
And the 2013 model was not really upgradable other than RAM. And maybe if you went to OWC, you could get a solid state drive upgrade, but there was no real upgrades for the 2013 Mac Pro.
Yeah. Now, what I do want to hear is I want to hear everybody who bitched on webs about all the things that the old Mac Pro didn't do along these exact lines. I'm waiting to see what their niggle points are going to be about this one.
Yeah, it seems like, one thing I would have been fantastic is for Apple to come in with kind of an entry level Mac Pro. I would love to see it, even just with like an i7 or something.
Well, they did
so
that.
A mere mortal could.
Well, what about the iMac
They did that.
Pro?
It's called the Mac Mini last year.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
That was their this can be used for pros and it's a low cost machine. And if you want graphics, then hook up an eGPU. So that I think that's what they were prepping us for, is that depending on what level you were at and what machines you wanted, I think the Mac Mini ticks those boxes, and the iMac Pro, we'll see if they update it at some point, maybe in the fall.
I expect, since I'm the oldest guy here with the longest term, possibly Richard, the longest term Apple experience, I do remember that my 2FX, probably in the early 90s, late 80s, I think I paid $17,500 for that machine plus a monitor.
Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah, I think I had it on a lease, on a 3-year business lease, and at the end of a year and a half, it was worth almost nothing. But I had it on a business lease, and I think it was $17,500 out the door with all the peripherals and stuff like that. So here we are, 20 years later, essentially, and this fully configured is a monster at those kind of dollars. And for most businesses, that is not a particularly onerous cost profile to face. Yes, for an independent person wanting to make their film, that's a stretch. You get into 10, base 10, and you're pushing up to 15, and you maybe even can easily push it to 20,000 if you fully configure it. That's a lot of money, and I think everybody has to understand that.
If they do 1.5 terabytes of RAM at Apple prices, that's going to be like $75,000 or something.
Exactly. So everybody, right above me is Bill Davis from California. I'm going to introduce everybody.
Am I left or right on your?
You're above me today.
You bottom left or you?
Yeah, I'm right below you. I'm directly above. You're
See,
directly above me.
you're in my upper left-hand corner.
Right.
I'm in my lower right-hand corner.
And then in my upper left-hand corner, Mr. Brad Olson.
Hello.
And all the way over to my left, we have T. Payton. Look
From
at
New
this.
Mexico.
From New Mexico. This is the all-star cast today. And, of course, we're going to be talking, my name is Richard Taylor, we're going to be talking about the Mac Pro, WWDC. There's a new version of Final Cut Pro that's been pre-announced on the website. They showed a new version of Logic Pro at WWDC. And that display, what the heck is... the display is 6,000, 7,000 with the stand.
It's only 5,000.
$5,999,
but it's 6,000. It's a 6K.
And the stand is an extra 1,000 T.
Right.
Oh, you know what? Actually, do you want to get into that? I don't know if you want to get into that. I just wanted to say something really quickly.
Sure.
About the price of the Mac Pro.
Go ahead.
So, okay, in 1984, my dad got me a Mac 128K. It was $24.95. So I just used my little inflation calculator.
Yep.
On my phone. So today, in today's dollars, that'd be $6,104.
There you go.
For today.
There
So
you go.
just to put it in perspective with what Bill was saying, I think we look at that and just say, wow, that's ridiculous. You know, the cost, who in the world could afford that? Well, go back to $1984 and say like, wow, that's kind of reasonable for a, not reasonable, but for a computer. And just like Bill said, well, you've got a big production. You can just say, oh, okay, you know, we're dropping $10,000 on this, this machine that's going to do everything. And we can have other people, you know, work now, now it makes MacBook Pros look cheap. And everything else look rather inexpensive. But anyway, regarding the cost, so I just went to the Atomos site and looked at their new displays that they have. So they have similar spec displays. Granted, it can record and it can do some other stuff. So just a second here. I was just there.
It's
so they have a 31
for
inch.
the 31 inch, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's how much, Brad?
8,000.
Yeah, 8,000.
Yeah.
It helps to be big and be able to manufacture your own stuff.
Yeah.
So as far as like now, granted, the Atomos is supposed to be, used on a production. So it's a little bit different in the usage that you'd have for it, but it's within the ballpark, I think, of that kind of cost. And it seems like, is that 1,000 nits? Yeah, it's 1,000 nits.
Yes.
Just like I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Atomos website.
Okay.
Yeah, 1,000 nits, just like the Mac Pro display. So, wow. That's
listen, we are given an embarrassment of riches. I mean, literally, what you can do on a MacBook is way more than I could do on that 2FX that I had to lease back 20 years ago. And the laptops can do more. The iMacs can get close to what and then this is another tier for another type of user, an industrial, high volume user. And so it's great that they have this in there. And I hope it quiets a lot of the, but I can buy a cheap PC that'll do better.
Listen,
they just look at specs.
Everybody wanted a Pro machine. Mm-hmm. Okay. Pro machines are expensive. This is the Pro market. There's an article already out that says Apple's targeting Hollywood with this Mac Pro.
Right. And even people doing corporate video and stuff like that. Let's say that you've got a modest corporate practice and you're, pulling down, let's just invent a number. Let's say you get $7,000 per video. It doesn't take a bunch of videos to make this make sense. If you're doing 3 over the course of a quarter, you're essentially paying for this, depending on your tax position and the rest of that, with maybe 3 to 5 productions. So if you're doing one a month, if you've got a normal operating business, this isn't ridiculous capital expense.
No, of course not.
Right.
Especially when you look at cameras, you're probably spending, $20,000 on a couple, on a red camera or something that's like your base model kit on B&H. Yeah, it doesn't seem outrageous for that. It's definitely not targeting someone like me, but I said before this whole event that I'm already happy with the Mac hardware that I have. I've got a Mac Pro, I've got a Mac Mini, and it does the job just fine. Would I love a Mac Pro? Sure. Is someone going to give it to me? Maybe. I don't know.
and I think the question that everybody has to ask themselves is, are you in, see, to me, there's the creative environment and there's the production environment. The creative environment is somebody going out to make their passion project, or they're hired because they're a creative and they bring something special to the table. There's another side of the business, which is huge, which is all those people in all those office buildings that are cranking out content. Those are as much production environment as they are creative environment. For those kind of operations, if this, with the specs that they announced this morning, significantly increases their productivity, then I got to believe the bean counters will have a real easy switch into this. Because if you can work with ProRes RAW all day long at 6K or 8K,
they said 8K can play
8K
live.
3 streams. I know.
Yeah.
There's
Sorry, I was just thinking of the, in terms of Mac Pros, these things last for 10 years.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
this is a significant investment, but yet, I mean, what you're getting, I'm just looking at the Mac Pro site right now, the redonkulous number of PCI slots. I mean, 4 double wide slots and 3 single wides. And I think, one thing that they said is that, you can use these Apple MPX GPUs that are all tied together, or you could just slap in another GPU. And, someone's going to figure out how to flash, whatever, or other manufacturers are going to make GPUs. You're going to be able to do kind of whatever you want with this thing for a very long time. So I think that, to look at, I know I'm in the Facebook group, I think it's Mac Pro users or something that kind of soup up their old machines. And, it's crazy what they're doing. And to realize this is a similar thing. This is the upgraded cheese grater that was really being asked for.
Yes, it absolutely was.
When the trash can Mac Pros came out. I mean, the trash can Mac Pro really was a, what was it? The Cube. Remember the G4 Cube?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, that's really what that was. And it was like kind of an attempt to do something, but it was like, wow, it's great that it has a full size. I mean, it didn't have full size PCI. It didn't have the upgradable GPU that pros need. And it seems like this is the kind of machine that's going to give somebody longevity. And I can think too, like in a colorist's room, boy, is there anything that's going to be able to touch this for like Resolve?
No.
They're just going to load up GPUs in this thing and go to town. I mean,
this is so far above what I expected for the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. I might get a Mac Pro. I'm not going to get the display, but I might actually get a Mac Pro. Now, one of the things, we had some questions in the chat. Pieter Huglin says the Mac Pro is beyond his expectations. And Bart Big Slesky, 2 things. During the WWDC presentation, they didn't mention SSD upgrades. And what's with that Pro display stand costing an extra $9.99?
Okay, let's talk about that, because it's a weird thing, and I they kind of skipped over it pretty fast. I know everybody went, ouch, that's expensive, and the rest of that. But again, I'm going to look at it purely from productivity. There is in that weird little arm, they blew kind of up and they showed you what was inside of it, and there was a pretty big engineering effort into that, balance to the size and weight of that screen.
Right.
And I think there will be people who will want to go that direction, simply because if you're in some kind of development effort or whatever, the fact that it is positionable and swivelable portrait landscape, yes, it is a lot of money, but again, you're talking about Pro Tools for a certain kind of pro user. And I can see somebody who's working on the kind of projects where there's a robust money flow. Pick a big name in music,
Sure.
Pick a big name in cinema, pick a big name in, somebody who has a reputation for constantly doing work and churning through a revenue stream. it'll be a nice tool for those users.
Sure.
They engineered a specific solution for a specific set of problems that not everybody will have. And yeah, a lot of users, that's $1,000 for a stand. What are you, crazy? But we found out a lot of the times, in those McLarens and those high-end Maybachs and stuff like that, your fuel pump is 4 times the normal.
What's the top iMac Pro cost? 15
I just
grand?
want everybody to know I already have a Mac Pro right here.
You devil.
Hey,
So
can I
go
share my
on?
screen?
Yeah, that's what I
let me
was
share
trying to
my
figure.
screen real quick. Let's see.
I don't know how to do that. I was just wondering if I could do that.
I don't know if you can. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's,
there you
okay.
go.
Can you see that?
I'm not seeing that. We're seeing it on Skype, but I'm not seeing it on
It's on my
the
screen,
live
so
stream.
my
Oh, it's not on the
Skype
live stream, but we
No,
can see it on
it's not on
Skype.
the live stream. Yeah.
Oh, it's like
Interesting.
copyrighted or something like that.
No, I'm using software that uses Skype, but it's not Skype directly.
Oh, okay. That's it. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you, so to answer that question about upgrade of the SSD. So
Yes.
it doesn't have an SSD. It has one of those, crazy fast PCI direct things.
Okay.
Anyway, so on the website, up to 4 terabytes of internal storage. It says it starts with a 256 SSD and is configurable to 1, 2, or 4 terabyte.
Yes.
All
So it can be
encrypted.
upgraded.
And
yeah.
so get this, there's a little slot for them. So it's user upgradable. And you can just pop another SSD card in there. So
it is user upgradable.
yeah, it looks just like a module. I mean, it looks like a thing you'd plug into a Nintendo 64.
Yeah, so a solid state sled mounted memory RAM module.
You guys can see it. It's in there. It's right there.
Yeah.
There's an AR app, so you can see what the Mac Pro will look like in your office.
Wow.
With the wheels and like wheeling it around. So
Listen, I am ecstatic. I am completely ecstatic. Can I afford it? No, but I'll figure out a way to get one. I think I will. But what is it? What does the top end iMac Pro cost? 15 grand, right? If you load it with everything.
With the RAM, yeah.
15 grand, yeah. So
yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what Phil and Phil
Hodges.
indicated. Phil Hodges indicated he was going to thinking maybe that there's maybe 5,000 people in that marketplace, the high-end pros who need this kind of edge case computing. It'll be interesting to see how well it does.
I am so glad that they did this. I really am. I mean, who's this marketing? This isn't marketing Hollywood.
I don't know. I think it is aimed at a lot of Hollywood people.
Exactly.
They announced Adobe, Avid, all those
Resolve.
people supporting it.
Resolve. Yep.
Yep. So I think it's definitely squarely aimed at all those people who've been holding on to their really old machines because there hasn't been an upgradable Mac, and now they have it and they can get it.
I think the real answer is people who can generate purchase orders.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's funny to think about. So at our shop, we started off with G3s, went to G4s. We had the G4s with the like candy colored ones. And then we went to Mac Pro G5, I want to say.
Yep.
And then
I had
we
the G5.
went,
Yep.
I can't remember all the years, but then, so 2006, we went to Mac Pros and we got 30-inch displays. So I'm still using, I wish I could point my camera. Here, I will. So look right here. I'm still using my 2006
Apple Cinema
30-inch Apple Cinema display. It's awesome.
I have one. Yep.
So this is 13 years later, which is great. Anyway, so it was kind of funny so we upgraded our machines in 2012. So we upgraded in 2006 to Mac Pros. And anyway, and then went to iMacs. And I was scared about going to iMacs because I just thought, how in the world are we going to have the performance that we've had in, these towers forever? And anyway, we were all just so pleasantly surprised by that. And really our day-to-day work. So my day-to-day work, we're not even in a 4K workflow most of the time. Most of the time we're just editing in 1080. So my iMac that I'm on right now is a 2013 iMac, 32 gigs of RAM. And anyway, it works great. It works great for Final Cut, and it's awesome. And if I open up Premiere in it, it crashes. It's great. I'm kidding. No, Premiere really is slow. Adobe products are getting, they're really having trouble. They're having some kind of bloat issues with all their products, and hopefully they'll fix those soon because we rely on Adobe stuff all the time.
Right.
But anyway, I just wanted to say that we moved to the iMac, and we never looked back. And the, our old Mac Pros are boat anchors. I mean, that's what we call them. They're just so heavy. And we're like, why did we ever need these things? But yet, that's just our world. We're an ad agency, branding company. And boy, we live with iMacs, and we're delighted with them. And I think, though, to hear from my buddy, like Kevin Bailey, he was working on that movie with Tina Fey.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah, that thing. And they shot a lot of that here in Albuquerque and up in Santa Fe too. And they needed more power for all the assistants that were working on that. So that was just a difficult production, and they needed all the power they could get. And I think they felt like, and again, so I'll stop the comments with that because I actually don't know anything more. So I'm kind of guessing is that, you get to the point and you're like, okay, this is all I can do with an iMac. I need more. And when you get to that place where you say, oh, I need more. And it's like, okay, Apple has that. In fact, They don't have just more. They have as much as you can imagine, as far as 1.5 terabytes of RAM, which is crazy. And anyway, so the world that this thing is fitting into, I think, fits nicely into their kind of level of need that people have. Branding company like us, we're in Adobe. We're in InDesign, we're in Affinity Designer, Affinity Photo, we're in Sketch, we're in Final Cut, we're in Motion all day, and I think iMacs are great for us. We no longer need a Mac Pro, but there's such a need for the world that's above us, and just have a more robust system. So,
which is an interesting point because it brings up the idea that once upon a time, the easiest thing to do when buying new hardware was just spend as much money as you can, max everything you can, max processor, max GPU, max RAM, and you always knew that within, if not right now, within a couple of years, you would have maxed out use of whatever those resources were. I wonder if the industry now has moved into a kind of a different era where right sizing is going to be more important than the work we do blowing up in terms of stress on our computers in order to get it to function correctly. And one of the things I'm talking about is that I have edited for now 3.5 years exclusively on a MacBook Pro, and there has not been one single job that has come through my shop where the capacity of the machine slowed me down so much that it jeopardized the delivery of work. In the old days, literally, when you set something to render out of Final Cut Classic, you could be facing a 10-hour, a 20-hour, a 40-hour render.
Absolutely.
And all of that has just vanished. So now maybe the difference is, okay, this is going to take 2 hours of rendering for a very long, very complex project. And if I buy the new one, it would take that 2 hours and collapse it maybe to a half an hour or maybe 15 minutes, which would be awesome. But the question is, how often do we face that in reality? How often is the difference between I'm going to start at rendering, go get lunch, come back, and after the end of that, it'll be pretty close to the end? That, to me, is pretty acceptable for most kinds of work. And so can we outcompute our actual workload needs now with machines like this? I believe a lot of people can, and they will be buying it based on I just like the best and the coolest and everything, that's fine. There will always be people who want to do that and can afford it, right?
I'll tell you what I can afford.
Okay.
The power bill. It's 1.4 kilowatt power supply.
Right.
And it's and the processor alone is what did they say it runs 300 watts, just the processor?
Yeah, but they're going to do a co-promote with Tesla Powerwall, right? So you buy your new Mac Pro and you buy the Tesla Powerwall, and then you're fine.
Well, you're just going to have your own wind turbine outside your office to generate that power. Hey, so one thing that's interesting, the Afterburner card that was there. Yep. So, boy, I was mentioning just real quick. Sorry, I want to talk about Afterburner, but also Bill, just talk about workflow as far as like waiting for render. So, we typically deal with 30-second spots, 90-second spots, 2 to 5 minute corporate videos, and then we do half-hour shows. So that's about all we do. So the half-hour shows take a half an hour for us to get out, and we never render. We do all we can. We don't have background rendering turned on. We just export from there. So and on top of it, we only work on gigabit Ethernet. So I was thinking about a jellyfish, talked to Sam about it.
Right.
But I was like, you know what? So we use NFS Manager, this little $10 app, to just share a CalDigit 12 terabyte RAID. And we do it over our network, just 100, on gigabit. And it works great. I mean, we never have any slowdowns. We don't have any issues. And it's kind of funny. It works so well. It's kind of like, well, do we need to upgrade? Do we need more of this machine? Anyway, I just wanted to just say that real quick as far as like exporting times and things like that. Final Cut is just so efficient that, even on our 2013 iMac here, it works great. I mean, it works fantastic. The only, one thing I wish they would show, if they were able to do denoising of video in real time, that'd be huge.
Be interesting to see if the guys at Neat and at Apple with their internal denoiser, I bet you that's one of the work groups, whoever's in charge of that software inside Final Cut.
Neat's never been particularly CPU efficient, but we know that Apple's noise reduction was something that they wanted to, that's why it turns off when you hit play, because they wanted to make sure that the performance, that it never got in the way and slowed you down like these other denoisers. So I would be interested to see if that denoiser, how it would behave on the Mac Pro. T, you were just mentioning the Afterburner. This answers a big question because Red, they went up on stage. Jared Land said, "Hey, check out what we can do with NVIDIA cards and 8K Red footage." And they're like, "Apple, you need to support NVIDIA cards." And we didn't see any announcement about NVIDIA cards being supported in the new Mac Pro, but we saw kind of an answer to that need. And even Red being mentioned during the keynote with this Afterburner. Of course, they're touting ProRes and ProRes RAW acceleration. Right. I imagine that it accelerates Red footage and other kinds of media as well. The thought here is, so what's it, $6,000 for the base model of this thing? When Red was doing their own acceleration card for Red, that was over $6,000, the Red Rocket. So, and that was a card designed for a very specific niche professional market, but this computer is aimed at those people as well. So for the same prices you were paying a couple of years ago for Red Rocket, you're getting at least a base model of a whole computer.
It's not Moore's Law, but it is the video acceleration of value per dollar in the video space, because there are so many developers and so many customers and consumers to spread those costs.
Hey, so wait, I just wanted to look up something regarding the Afterburner. So one thing they mentioned about the Afterburner is the technology it is. So it's a thing called an FPGA, which is a programmable gate array. So what that is, as far as my understanding, that is a chip that can be programmed to do anything. So some of my buddies at church work on satellites. And they use FPGAs to allow it's hardware, but they can make the hardware do anything at once. So they can make the hardware be a GPU. They can make their hardware be a CPU. They can make their hardware be an H.264 encoder. It could do anything. But it's, just like we know, hardware encoders are really fast. So it can kind of pre-program these pathways. So I don't want to be too technical. I'm just kidding. I don't really understand it. I just know from what they've told me. So I'm thinking that this Afterburner can do anything that they want it to do. It could accelerate red decoding, and it could accelerate debayering. It could accelerate noise reduction. They can just program it to do whatever they want. I mean, you could have H.265 decoding being programmed on it. So
does the Afterburner have its own dedicated slot, or is that going in one of the other slots?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that little
it's a PCI card.
But that's the half, right? There were 4 double wides, 3 single wides, and then the last one was a little half wide that I think is designed for this.
Is it designed for the Afterburner? I thought that the half wide one was their I/O. They had 2 Thunderbolts and something else on the I/O.
Maybe you're right.
I don't think they said what it. I don't think they specified where it plugs in.
It does say when you scroll down on the Mac Pro page that it's a card. It's a PCI Express X16 card.
Okay.
The only thing I'm sure of is somebody amongst our friends will say 7 full-size slots is not enough.
Yeah,
of course.
Either is the number of RAM slots, just not enough RAM slots.
Just not enough.
This thing is like, it's like they were laughing at us because we were complaining about Mac not being pro enough. They said, here.
Yeah.
This
is
how
long
enough.
will it be before we see somebody with a new Mac Pro on their desk and an eGPU on the outside? I just couldn't max it out enough.
Yeah, right.
Well, and it's interesting to think about too when they previewed that rack situation. Yeah. So you tie these puppies together with a Thunderbolt 3. Dude, that's right. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, the potential of combining a whole bunch of these together is really tremendous. Wow. This is just a ridiculously powerful machine.
It absolutely is. It's like I'm so ecstatic for it that it came out this powerful. So everybody's asking about NVIDIA. At this point, wouldn't that be up to the OS? Wouldn't that be up to the OS to support it?
Yeah, obviously you could physically put in a card, right? So it just comes down to the drivers and the operating system. So we'll have to wait and see, I guess. But Apple certainly didn't. And they bragged that these AMD cards were more powerful than the NVIDIA cards. So
yeah.
I don't know.
So what is the deal? I've kind of, my son got married. I've been like in that zone. What is the deal with, I heard some rumors of people talking about NVIDIA not even being supported on Mojave.
Yeah, there's no drivers available.
So, but I'm looking at this is a 2013 iMac. I have an NVIDIA GPU in it. So.
And you're on Mojave?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a 780, and so I think even my MacBook.
Maybe it's just the newer cards or the new. Because my understanding is if you updated to Mojave and you had a Mac Pro with an NVIDIA card, that.
Yeah, GPUs are weird. And remember how people would buy them from one thing, but then they'd have to reflash the ROM to make them work on something else. You get into those driver things. Is it speaking metal, or is it speaking an older? Is it speaking CUDA, or is it speaking something else? I just think there's hardware complexity is way above my pay grade that gets into whether you can use that card in this thing and whether this thing supports that style of card.
Okay, maybe it's just like new drivers.
Maybe. So Braden Storr says, yes, it's a monster. Buy a Mac Pro and get a free furnace for your home.
Yeah, that is a pretty big power supply. Invest in room air conditioner companies.
Yeah, can we hook up like an air duct to the back?
Well, didn't they actually make the front of it look more like a cheese grater than the old one?
It's even more, yeah.
Oh, check out the icon. So there's an icon if you scroll onto the way bottom of the Mac Pro page. I'm sorry, not all the way down to the bottom. Wait.
I'm going to scroll.
No. I'm sorry. It's the final. Maybe it's the Final Cut page. There's a black and white line art icon of the of the Mac Pro, and you could put it on Icon Factory as a cheese grater because it looks exactly like a cheese grater. Let's see, maybe it's on the Final Cut Pro page.
Let me go to Final Cut Pro. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, so hey, by the way, so my my MacBook Pro, which is what year is this?
Well, just go to the top of the apple.com/Mac. There's the icon there.
Before you change subjects, I just must say it. Who doesn't like grated cheese?
Exactly.
Sure. Anybody?
This episode should be titled "Bring Out the Cheese."
Okay, so anyway,
it's like grated brie or something. It's like a whole.
My MacBook Pro also has NVIDIA.
Which one?
So,
which model is that?
What year is that, T?
It's a 2014.
Okay, so
and obviously I use these things every day, and they work great.
Good point. Absolutely. So it is supported sometimes. We don't know what the problem is with going forward. But I keep hearing that, is it going to support? Is it going to support? Well, I think that's up to the OS at this point, maybe the app, I don't know. Because it's certainly
there's a lot of intellectual property issues, I think, between it's a piece of hardware and it's a computer, and we want to put the two together. I think there's a few issues of connection.
Okay, I'm looking up. I went to iconfinder.com and typed in cheese grater.
Yep.
The difference is that a real cheese grater looks more like a Dalek in the sense that it's tapered on the top. Sorry, Doctor Who reference.
I love it. I love it.
It's more kind of like tapered on the top. So a regular cheese. So the Mac Pro isn't really a cheese grater because it's straight.
Well, it's an Apple model.
These little circles had, kind of like almost like the old radiation symbol. They had some little thing go into the top and the two sides, and they were very, So I think this is like nuclear powered cheese grater.
That's funny. Okay, so the Mac Pro is cray. I mean, it is crazy.
It is crazy. Absolutely.
I think it's going to satisfy. No one's going to be able to say that Apple is not there for power users. But one thing that was interesting, I was poking around the site looking at the new, what's the new OS called? Capelli?
No, it's Catalina.
Catalina. What's really interesting is they moved the OS to its own, dude, I'm sorry, I just can't think.
Its own page on the web?
No, to its own, sorry, this is like charades. What is this thing I'm talking about? When you take a drive and you partition it? Okay, yes. Anyway, it's its own partition that is read-only. It puts the OS in a read-only partition.
Where did you get that? Where did you see that?
I totally made it up. No, I'm kidding.
I bought it because with the security
protection, thing, is that the
with sandboxing and secure enclave.
Sandboxing. That's what
I was buying everything you were saying. Going,
no. I'm totally serious. I didn't make it up at all.
No, I understand.
Let me give you the wording for it. It says, because I looked at it a couple times. I'm like, what? Please hold. Okay, dedicated system volume. Again, I wish I could just share my screen. macOS Catalina runs in its own read-only volume, so it's separate from all other data on your Mac, and nothing can accidentally overwrite your system files. And Gatekeeper ensures that new apps you install have been checked for known security issues before you run them, so you're always good, or you're always using good software.
Good, because that's more and more you're going to hear on the news over and over again about these attacks on infrastructure and things like that, and people getting into operating systems of all computers, not just our desktop publishing and desktop video creation things. And so if Apple stays out in front of this with this flashing red message going, secure as you can get, it'll never be perfect, but we are taking security seriously, that is a long-term value add that I don't think we should underestimate the value of.
Yeah, so that's really wild to think about. Right now, we've got that partition for, dude, I'm spacing it. Obviously, I need some water.
Yeah, you're getting dehydrated.
You're talking about when you...
No, we have that partition for the recovery partition.
Yep.
And the recovery partition is, you can't write to it. You can't really do anything on it. It's always safe, kind of there. And, it's amazing. I had a system my iMac here, I was having problems with the internal drive. The Fusion drive died after, 5 years. And so I put another drive in, and it needed its own recovery partition. So I called up Apple support, and they said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It will just rebuild itself." And it did. It just rebuilt itself and put its own partition there. So I wonder if they're going to get the OS like that. So the OS can kind of just rebuild itself and fix itself. And think of that too. You could do a reinstall. You could do a fresh install with just, you just wipe out that partition. It maybe makes a new partition. This is total conjecture. Makes a new partition and then can wipe out the old one. And you just have your user files that are there. And it really separates things. So that's kind of
when Richard and I were on with
exciting.
Serena and Phil last week, we were talking about all these security issues, and I just think this is going to get this stuff. He was talking about sandboxing, about how critical this stuff is, and I think it's going to be consistently more and more critical.
Yeah.
Don't ignore security. And look. What I'm finding in my personal practice is I do videos and I get better and better and I get known more and more out there. I'm getting clients for whom security is. We're doing financial institutions and we're doing stuff like that. And man, they take that stuff very, very seriously.
No,
Maybe
absolutely.
not Hollywood movie level seriously, but it's percolating up because,
Even transcriptions, absolutely. People want them secure. They don't want them just going anywhere.
Exactly. And if you can't tell them, yes, if you work with me, your work will be safe, period, full stop, then they don't want to work with you.
Huh.
Right.
So Apple is building that into our stuff is, like I said, it's a huge value add to my way of thinking.
Interesting about the dedicated system volume is I remember building computers 20 years ago, and the first thing we would do is partition a drive to have the operating system and application section and then the user files. So I was manually doing that forever ago. So it actually makes a lot of sense for them to just do it that way. But of course there's a gatekeeper. It says that ensures new apps you install have been checked for known security issues. So there's obviously more control over it. It's not all manual like that, but
makes sense to me. The old practice we used to have of not upgrade. I'm not going to upgrade. I'm in the middle of something where I'm in the middle of a 6 months project. So for the next 6 months, I won't update anything on the odd chance that things won't work anymore. I'm being torn away from that world, and I'm being torn into the new world of it's a trusted Apple update directly from them. And I think I'm going to allow it to go through. And I've done that last few times, even if I'm in. Even if it's a system level update and I'm in some relatively big project, I know I'm doing overnight backups anyway, so I can always go back to an earlier state. But every time I say yes to that upgrade, I think I'm getting a little more secure, because one of the things they're pushing over the web are safety features for these known exploits that come across their security radar.
Sure. I think
those things are good.
So, Brad, Bradley, sorry. Do you like
Fine.
Brad or Bradley?
I don't care. People call me Brad. It's easier.
Okay.
I'm Bradley Olson because on IMDb I had to be Brad Olson 2, or I could be Bradley Olson. So.
Oh, okay. So I wonder if, I'm just guessing here, when it says that this again back to the dedicated system volume, I wonder if they're thinking of, okay, we're going to put the OS here, and then that's the only thing that lives on this partition. There's no apps that live on the partition. Anything that needs to be system level, I mean, normally you'd put in the system/library. Maybe now everything is going to live on a user level or a shared user level. Even apps might even live there.
Yeah, what I was reading is that oh gosh, I lost the page. Anyway, it said that the apps would be installed and checked on that same partition.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. You found something else.
I don't know. I was on the bottom of too many tabs open.
On the bottom of the Catalina preview, it mentions
right here. Gatekeeper ensures new apps you install have been checked for known security issues before you run them. Yeah, it sounds like it's got macOS and the App Store icon on dedicated system volume.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Apps,
well, interesting. We'll have to wait and see. what that is. I just know for me, that's an exciting thing to think about, just having a clean system, because I know that, boy, I maintain a couple of Windows computers, and wow, what a drag. Having to reinstall the OS on those. But even on a Mac, right now you can do a repair install. If you just go to your repair petition and just start over, you can get back, but you still might think, there's still something squirrely in there. And it seems like this move could make our machines just so much more stable, because especially over time, and realize, hey, there isn't some funky cache thing that's going on, or some preferences that are being written inside there. If everything is on the user account level, then it's like, okay, just create a new user account and go to town. So I think
I have to nod at the word stable. And, listen, I utterly understand how important all the things we've been talking about are. But I'm going to take my one moment here to be, because it's a tower. It's a sharp looking tower. It's a wonderful looking tower. It'll do fine. It'll instantly be seen across the room as, oh, you have a new Mac Pro. How's it working for you? Which all those things are great. I just have a little tiny piece of me that goes, wow, I was kind of maybe hoping it was like some bizarre layer cake dodecahedron shape that I had never seen before in my life. And I can go, wow, the designers went a little nuts. Does it all work really cool? So I get it. I think in this case, it's what every pro begged for, right? This is exactly what every pro coming out of shops and stations.
Absolutely.
This we understand. Don't go too crazy on us. I'm going to have a momentary sadness for the lack of crazy in this machine. It'll probably be great. You don't need to be crazy all the time. I just truly admire, and I hope in some area Apple still has a couple of those nuts in the back room who dream of something wacky, because this machine is fabulous. It's strong. It's powerful. I don't see it as being that much fun, but fun doesn't always make you money. You have to bring the fun to this machine.
No, I'm with you, Bill, in terms of I like when Apple does unexpected things, and I like when they have some sort of, I was like, your imagination starts to run wild about what a next generation modular Mac Pro could be. And of course, this just ticks the boxes in a huge way.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I didn't imagine, a 28 core machine, and like the level that you can configure it up to is amazing, but it's certainly I think it's what they needed to do. It's not what I necessarily wanted them to do, but it's what Apple needed to do to get all those people who held on to their old towers to swap them out with something they felt was worthy to upgrade.
I got two. I got a G5 and an Intel.
In a funny sort of way, they're kind of pushing us to put the creativity into the box from our side, rather than us demanding that they put the creativity as the box. And that's fine. When they showed, in the keynote, when they had like 96 gazillion tracks running in Logic, everybody goes, wow.
1,000, I think it was. I don't know. It was crazy.
Really impressive. We starting to visualize how just raw powerful this box is. And so maybe that's part of the message this time. There's less wow in the shape of the thing, and the wow lives inside of it and what it allows us to bring to the box in terms of our creativity. And that's okay. We'll survive.
And don't underestimate the power of nostalgia. There's obviously an iconic throwback to the cheese grater in a big way, and that's going to make people comfortable as well.
I know. Yes, I know. Gosh.
You just wanted more people to be mad, Bill.
Listen, there's time for both, right? Where you do not have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel works beautifully, and that's okay. And maybe we'll get to maglev someday, but we're not quite there yet in terms of our personal vehicles. So until that time, if you got rolling stock, these significant incremental pluses in how wheels work are great. And they do make our lives easier, and we should honor that and the rest of that. I just don't want to lose too much of the crazy. I don't want Apple to lose too much of the crazy.
If I can speak of the crazy.
Yeah.
So here's my thought about that. Okay, it's a box, but how do you design a box that's compelling?
I know.
And I think that, on the outside, one thing, just speaking as a designer, I'm totally in the designer world. Anything Apple does, designers, we just go, that's all we do is copy.
I know.
Designers, we have to have inspiration.
All right.
We have to have thought. So, we go out and look at nature and look at symmetry and say, wow, designed beautifully. And then we look at, like what Apple does. I mean, this is what we do with web design. We try to say, well, what are some ideas we could do here? Well, let's go to the Apple site and see what they've done recently. So I think that, even the way this is designed with even the displays look weird. I mean, they look truly weird. But give it some time, and then you're going to start seeing other stuff that's taking the cues from the designers at Apple and saying, hey, this is kind of minimalism, and this is kind of, simplicity. And I think, too, when you see it in person, it's probably going to be different. But with that, I'll bet you once you get into the innards of this thing, you're just going to be marveled by the thoughtfulness of it. I know that, even opening the cheese grater now, one thing about the cheese grater is I have to pick the thing. It is so heavy. It's unbelievable. I have one in my office at home that I just need to bring to my office at my house. I mean, bring my office at where I work. And the thing is so heavy, and it cuts into my hands when I pick up the handles. Yeah. And just the fact that they mentioned that and they said, here, it feels great in your hands.
Yeah.
Just that little kind of thing.
We went for a while to form over function, so maybe this is a pushback to function over form. And all of us live and die by function every day, so I don't have a problem with that. I still do move it to architecture. Sometimes you need an efficient, nice building that does everything correctly, and that you can use 2x4s, which tend to be square, or girders and beams, which tend to be squarish. And building those odd forms like the Sydney Opera House and the things that break from squares, those are wonderful adaptations of art to the construction things. They drive the builders crazy, I know, because I once had to do a capsule, and we tried to make it with no parallel walls inside my studio so that we don't get reflections and standing waves. And it was a pain in the ass to find a carpenter who could do that,
because they want to do everything square.
Right. They want everything to be even cuts, and it yields more wood, and it's more efficient. Right. And we had to get an old 65-year-old carpenter who would, do all the calculations of the back of an envelope and figure out the right angle to cut anything to make this odd, multi-sided working space work for me. So I get both sides.
So what do you guys think about the fact that both Final Cut Pro and the Mac Pro are coming in the fall, not December this year? That's the FCPX Creative Summit, I presume.
Yeah, I would think that we will be able to see and touch and play with, and or it may bode well for a revised Final Cut 10 for taking maximum advantage of the new hardware.
Well, Apple.com says a new Final Cut Pro is coming in the fall.
And it says as well.
Sorry, where did it say that?
Just go to finalcutpro.com.
Because I saw something about the display on the site.
Coming this fall.
So one thing it says, Metal dramatically accelerates graphic tasks like rendering, compositing, blah, blah, blah. When you're working on a system with an eGPU attached, you can select which GPU to use, internal or external, for peak performance. Mm-hmm. So it says that's new and coming this fall, that being able to select. And maybe what's happening too is that, because of the multiple GPUs again, it seems like, didn't recent versions of Final Cut 10 kind of drop some of the benefits of having multiple GPUs? Or is that just
I'm going to think that might be a play for the laptop crowd, because when you're out computing on your laptop and you bring it back in and you plug it into an eGPU, if you suddenly get a menu and say, outboard those GPU heavy tasks to my external GPU, that makes sense to me.
But maybe it's going to allow for just renewed support for multiple GPUs.
Could be.
Because it's going to need to do that. So, and it just says optimized for the all new Mac Pro. Again, this is finalcutpro.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of this, obviously it doesn't tell us much about the new version other than just they're going to optimize Final Cut for the new hardware, which is obvious.
Yeah, because you get all these things, and I wonder if things like Grand Central, which is it's been around a long time, I wonder if they have to do something to allow it to parcel out. I mean, what part of which projects go to which GPUs for the most efficiency? I mean, something has to determine that. So there has to be some kind of timekeeper conductor when you're starting to add all these GPUs on there that makes sense of that.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the Apple, when they had the meeting with the pros since 2017. Well, what do you want in the computer? And they said, I want this, and I want that, and I want this, and I want that, and I want this. And Apple said, okay, we're going to give it all to you, plus we're going to give you an accelerator card, plus we're going to give you 8 slots. We're going to,
Right.
Who expected that?
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely over the top what I expected, and I'm just ecstatic that the people that need this kind of a high-end machine can now get it. And they can run Resolve on it, and they can run Premiere on it, and they can run Avid on it, and they can run Photoshop on it, not just Final Cut.
Hey, Brad.
Yes,
So
sir.
I had a question about, I was just thinking about the product lineup. It was funny. Alex 4D posted
Goldner
on Twitter right before the keynote started. He said, order your 2013 Mac Pro while you can on the site. This is kind of a joke. But now you look at it and realize it's kind of a bargain. And I was thinking about, what if the 2013 Mac Pro survived? Would that be of some benefit? And then just to realize, well, wait, did the Mac Mini really take that slot? And you said that you're using a Mac Mini. What's your setup? What are you using a Mac Mini for, and how's it work?
I mostly edit on my MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini is really the home computer. But I actually have at times when I didn't want to pull out the laptop or whatever and just have the drive in my hand, I've been editing on the Mac Mini, and I don't notice a huge difference between the two machines, to be honest. The MacBook Pro is obviously has a dedicated graphics card and can handle certain effects faster, but aside from that, I mean, I feel like drive speed is more of a factor than computing power when it comes to a lot of that.
What did they say about the graphics card that's the basic graphics card, something new? Didn't they mention that? It's some kind of a new...
They mentioned a 580 on the base model, and then there's like a Vega 2 new graphics card.
Okay.
And then they mentioned you could, just fill up a bunch
Load
of slots
it up.
with...
Yeah. Load them up for those who with more
I mean,
money than...
It's hard to track all that stuff because it's just so...
It is. Well, I have my
brain can't wrapped around it.
My studio downstairs, my recording studio, I run it on a power mat. I mean, the old cheese grater, and it takes a PCIe card that gives me 24 I/O. I wonder if I'm going to be able to use that card in there. That would be amazing if I could.
I don't know why you wouldn't.
Well, the other thing is, how heavy is this thing? Because it requires wheels.
40 pounds.
40 pounds.
Yeah.
That's not going in your suitcase and on the airplane then.
It's an anti-theft measure.
No, you could take it on an airplane without having to pay an overcharge fee as long as your case for it was under 10 pounds.
10 pounds.
Okay.
That's right. The 50-pound limit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I guess the Pelican case alone is probably going to be 25 pounds or 30
Exactly.
pounds, so you will be paying over. Yeah. Unless light suitcase, but then hope that you don't get it thrown on the tarmac.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't think it's going in the overhead.
No, can you imagine?
Well, I think just to sum up, this is, at least for me, wow, way to go, Apple.
Yes, I agree.
Way to hit it out of the park. It's out of the park as price as well, but I'm delighted that the people that want this kind of machine are going to be able to get it, and I think it's you're going to trickle down as benefits to the rest of us. And someday these machines are going to be considerably cheaper. The power is going to be there, and boy, it's just a win-win for for everything, and it shows Apple's dedication to the pro market.
Absolutely, it does. This is a pro machine, period.
Yeah.
Not to completely shut down the Mac Pro, but there was a conversation, but there was a couple other announcements I think that were relevant for us as video people. And the first one I kind of noted, which was small, was just that you can now do video like color correction and rotation and editing on your iPhone. So you shoot video and you can actually adjust a bunch of settings, which is kind of cool. But then the iPad is a tool I've held off for years in getting, even with the iPad Pro, because there wasn't a way to manage files, plug in external drives, and browse files. Right. And there wasn't, and you could use Duet, but there wasn't a way to use. In fact, Bill, you were talking last time you were on about how you use an iPad, but you don't really. 90% of the time, you're not using the iPad for the iPad. Well, now you can hook up Final Cut Pro and an iPad and have your Apple Pencil and touch the color controls or different effects or transforms or whatever on your iPad as an extended display. Now I feel like is a great time for someone like me who's held off to actually get some really good use out of an iPad Pro with my MacBook Pro on the road.
Absolutely.
In my office.
I think.
Yeah. For me, it's one of those things. If the use case is there, this is going to eliminate lots of friction, and more people will do more things on dual setups using an iPad as a secondary screen. They also, by the way, did you see their little sop to people who do those touchpads and things like that? And they said not only can you use your iPad, but you can use other devices. So obviously. Yep. The plumbing that we used to have to go through Duet and a little Lightning to USB cable, that's obviously been made much more robust and much faster, which is going to be nothing but good for people.
What about a Final Cut Pro app on the iPad now? I mean, like Logic has the ability to have a key to have faders and stuff.
I don't know obviously the details about that, but when they did mention apps being optimized for this dual display view, Final Cut was right there on the screen as one of the applications that would work. And I'm hoping that the design team uses that as an opportunity to do some really cool things.
Clearly for a while, they've had the feature set, the bandwidth, the capabilities in-house distributed through Apple. I mean, if they announced it today and are showing things with it, then those decisions have been locked, which means at the point they got locked, the teams working on software, particularly Apple software, have been able to start designing changes to their code that leverage all this new capability. So I'm more excited for the Creative Summit than I have been in a while.
Yes.
I'm sure we will see it. I'm sure we will see the Final Cut 10 running on it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense not to have this be a Creative Summit where the robust rollout, touchable, buyable systems and use case scenarios. I'm sure this is going to get seeded to those, few creative content makers who can use these tools to do real projects and show them to us at the Creative Summit. This is how it works. This is how my experience was. And so it's really good news for the Final Cut Pro 10 community. It's also good news for the Premiere Pro community and for the Resolve community and the rest of those people, because
Logic.
if nothing else,
Yep.
those parts of their software that were really being constrained by the fact that they were so comparatively inefficient in running their code, when you throw this much massive horsepower at that, I think it pretty much breaks through a lot of those bottlenecks. And I can't imagine that this won't be a machine for people editing on Premiere, Blackmagic, Avid. I mean, they mentioned all of them from the stage.
Yep.
Yes, they did.
They're saying this is a video maker / professional design community tool that will leverage the best possible performance out of all the apps everywhere. And good for them to do that. We all believe that because 10 right now is so highly optimized that it ought to accelerate us into space in terms of fluidity and the lack of friction and the ability to do, which is where we all want to get to in our creative endeavors, right? I'd like to try it. Oh, there it is. No, it didn't work. Go someplace else. You don't want any waiting or confusion or redraw or whatever there. You just want to try it and know if it works or not and move on creatively.
Can I get a scrolling timeline now with the Mac Pro?
Yes.
With the Mac Pro, yes, but you've got to get 4 Vega 2 graphics cards.
You have to have one card
and the Afterburner.
Dedicated to your timeline.
Afterburner. Finally.
Finally. So on the iPad thing too. I mean, I'm just imagining. I for years now I've been wanting to use an Apple Pencil and the magnetic timeline together, and even my fingers and stuff. I don't know how it's gonna work. I don't know how much is gonna be optimized or ready to go, but it does point to a future where I will be able to edit with my hands, which will be really fun. I mean, directly.
So an interesting fundamental question, Brad. How touch aware can Final Cut Pro 10 be made to be? That's just an open question.
A magnetic timeline, I've said this because I've already used the magnetic timeline, obviously, with iMovie on an iPad and iPhone. And a magnetic timeline is the best that I've seen touch interface for a timeline. I mean, tracks are terrible compared to for touch and for stylus as compared to a magnetic timeline where you can drag clips around and move everything around each other. The other thing I was going to mention is I have not met. Has anybody met or know who David Earl is? He was the person announced that was the Pro Apps marketing person to demo Logic, and I haven't seen him at a Creative Summit at NAB. I don't know if I haven't met him. I mean, we all met some new people this last year, but anyway. And then I noticed when he was dragging on effects, I didn't know it didn't look like a third-party thing. There was a lens flare effect that he threw on there. So that's just a small little thing I noticed was that he had pre-built effects. They were custom pre-built effects that when he did his demo, he dragged a color corrector and a lens flare. And it makes me wonder if there's, I mean, that's a small little thing, but it makes me wonder if there's a lens flare filter or if he just was using something like motion VFX and he just renamed it lens flare as a custom effect. I don't know. Anybody else notice those things?
What the world of content needs is more lens flares.
Yes, of course.
Particularly like them off of people's teeth.
I'm just looking at every little detail of the presentation and trying to absorb as much as I could, and obviously we know
Final Cut Pro 10 Kremlinology is a fine tradition.
You know what? One thing I was just thinking of, that made me think of using the iPad with the Apple Pencil. I know just using what is Roger's thing called? Cormount,
yeah.
Chromatic.
No, Paint X, is it?
Paint X, yeah.
Paint X.
Yeah.
So, I was just needing to do some quick cloning and some things like that. And boy, the difference in dealing with something like that, like cloning or even tracing something with an Apple Pencil, it is a joy to use. And I can just picture the scenario of, looking at something and saying like, oh, I need to just clone over this area and clean up this footage a little bit, whatever, and then, track it and stuff. And then just pulling on my iPad and, it will probably just be like kind of
airbrushing.
Oh no, I was going to say the interface will probably just pop on something up in the control panel to connect the display. And then I can just grab my Apple Pencil and I'll just do it right there. And I can do it with the Apple Pencil and then just return to my work. And I think that kind of, even though that's possible now with, some third party stuff, to have it first party is going to be just fantastic. I mean, it's going to be a great tool. And I think as well, being able to, I think about like our conference room, which is just down the hall, be able to edit something and then realize, okay, I don't have time to export this and put it on Frame.io for whatever. I need to show it to the client and just run down there with my iPad. And it's connected as a second display and just play it, right off of this and realize, okay, I'm actually playing from my iMac in my office, but it's just playing here on my Wi-Fi network, on my iPad. That's going to be a great little boost as well, be able to kind of take that around. And also think about having a client display. I think it'd be really cool to be able to have a what I've wanted for a long time is a client display or a client monitor that they can make notes in real time that doesn't affect me. No. In other words, during playback.
I'm only laughing because once upon a time, and I will not name the client or whatever, we had a client, CEO, relatively large company, and he loved to be on set and he loved to make suggestions, and many of them were fine. Some of them were time sinks. So at one point, I remember we got real smart and we gave him a camera and said, "No one will talk to you like your people, so go out and do interviews for us." It was basically a way to say, keep him busy while we get the work done, because we're burning daylight here. Trying to
so there's a new post up on apple.com. Pro app developers react to the new Mac Pro and Pro Display XDR. And we have comments from Adobe. We have comments from Blackmagic Design. Yeah, this is on the newsroom. Maxon.
This is PR stuff.
Yeah, Avid, Unity, Pixar, Autodesk, Red Digital Cinema, Foundry, and Universal Audio, which I use their stuff. I love their stuff.
Oh, UA's been around a long time.
Yeah, Pixelmator, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool. Hey, guys, speaking of work, I have to get to a Zoom meeting in about 10 minutes. So
this is much more important, T.
I've got to go. But hey, I really enjoy it. I'm flattered for the invitation.
Absolutely.
And, it's great talking to you guys.
Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Okay. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, T. Talk to you later.
So I had a question for you. I definitely need to read all these reactions, but for you, Richard, obviously Logic got some love today, and we're a Final Cut community. But the question I have is, Logic Pro outsells Final Cut Pro as far as I can tell, based off of the App Store numbers.
Really?
Because whenever you look at the App Store, and I look at this every month or so, it'll tell you what the top grossing, and I assume it's by like the country you're in, but it'll tell you what the top grossing and the top selling paid apps are. And Logic, for a while, Final Cut was higher grossing, but Logic was usually consistently higher selling. And I think lately Logic's been higher grossing than Final Cut, even though it doesn't cost as much as Final Cut Pro 10. So my question to you is, we have this nice little Final Cut community. What's the equivalent in the Logic world? I mean, there's a lot of users out there, but are any of them banding together? And
yeah, I belong to a few, maybe 2 or 3 Logic Facebook groups, but I think the Final Cut Pro community is much bigger.
I mean, there's got to be more Logic users though, but they're just not in a community like this.
I would be surprised. I don't think Logic has 3 million or 3.5 million seats. I'd be surprised if it did.
Well, like I said, that whenever I look at I obviously don't have numbers, but whenever I look at top selling paid apps, Logic is consistently outselling Final Cut week to week.
I'd be surprised, to be honest with you, if it had the same kind of numbers that Final Cut has. So I'm not sure how that's translating to seats.
My assumption is that there's a lot of people out there that are using Logic, but they aren't organized in the community the same way. There's not been the backlash or hate on Logic either that Final Cut got. So.
Well, what happened was Logic updated it at version 9, did a lot of updates, so version 9 to version 10 was a natural transition.
Yep.
So it wasn't a giant leap from redoing the whole app with new code and going.
Top paid apps and games on the App Store that I'm looking at right now. Number 1 is Magnet, which is a 99-cent app. Number 2 is Logic Pro 10. Number 3 is Disk Cleaner, and then number 4 is Final Cut Pro. So, however often they update this, Logic Pro is outselling Final Cut Pro at this moment, and pretty much whenever I've looked at this App Store for the last several years.
Well, I'd be surprised. What I'd like to know then is how many seats Pro Tools has.
Yeah, probably not. Well, there was that report from Avid as far as the number of people subscribing and users, and it wasn't very many.
Because I would think that Pro Tools is bigger than Logic, and I'd be surprised pleasantly if they have. We don't know what Apple has.
I would be surprised if Pro Tools was. I would be surprised if Pro Tools was bigger than Logic. think Logic is probably available in a lot more places.
Okay.
A lot of people recording music from their bedrooms, in Europe and other places in the world that are probably using Logic. And there's other DAWs, other tools, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think everyone, this was years ago, but when I was in college and I first learned Logic, the thing I heard back then was that everybody who had Pro Tools still bought a copy of Logic for the plugins because they would work in Pro Tools.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. But I don't know, Brad. I'd be pleasantly surprised if it, we don't know. We're presuming it's 3 million, 3.5 million at this point. We don't know. Maybe we'll get an update sometime for the seats of Final Cut Pro. So
it'll be interesting. I'm getting pulled away too, so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. But this was a big day for everybody.
Giant.
We were all hoping to see some mention of Final Cut Pro in the keynote, and did we get everything we were looking for there and then some.
Absolutely. And then the Mac Pro was the big thing. It was interesting this time because nobody was denying it. Apple wasn't confirming it, but they would, sometimes if rumors get out ahead of things, they'll issue a statement ahead of time. No, this is going to be a software WWDC. We're not going to do any hardware.
You know what I like? Unlike this is the last thought that I'm going to share. When it comes to iPhones, we know months ahead. There's all these leaks. We know exactly what they're going to be. We have a really good idea of what the features are going to be, and there's very few surprises. There was nobody that knew exactly what this Mac Pro was going to be. In a way, it should have been totally predictable, but in a way, it was not at all.
Right.
And there was definitely, I didn't see any early leaks of renderings or anything that was accurate as far as what it would look like or be. And so that, I think, is where the surprise is, and it is a pre-announcement. It's not available today, but the surprise is definitely welcome in this case.
No, I kept teasing a mini cheese grater. Well, it's not a mini cheese grater; it's another cheese grater. So I'm ecstatic. I want
cheese grater 2.0, Richard.
I like Pro machines to be iron, to be powerful. I don't care about the size of them. So
cool day.
All right, gentlemen.
We all got a lot of nice stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. I thank T as well.
Yeah.
And we'll be back on whenever we feel like it. We'll let everybody know.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you later.
Adios.